Welcome, my gentle and of course very modern apes. Today is the 6th of August 2024, and welcome to another episode of Chewed Gum. I'm your gentle and of course very modern host Erika, and I'm here with Alyssa. Alyssa, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today, Erika?
You know, I'm well. Right before this show, I decided that I was like, I'm getting back on my fitness grind after coming back from Kenya, and it's been absolutely miserable. So I've been trying to get back into the groove of things. It's been very difficult. I decided to go on a run, and where I am, I didn't check the temperature, but it was 103 degrees, 104 degrees today. I think I came the closest I've come to heat stroke. I came back and just laid down in the shower, and I was like, is this what it's like to brush with death? Like, it was awful.
Are you in a place that's humid too? I don't remember where you live now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's humid where I'm at. And it's like that miserable, heavy humidity as well, where it's like you can't cool fast enough.
It's killing me. I'm in New York, and it is, first of all, pouring rain outside. So as a heads up, it's possible I will lose power. So if I just disappear, that's my graceful exit, and I've lost power at my house. But I will take 99, 100. Well, I don't know why I said 99. That was really specific. I would take 100 degrees anywhere in like a super dry place like California any day over 80 degrees here and humid, because oh my God, it's like I literally go like this when I'm outside and it's not raining outside. I'll go like this and my hands are wet.
Yeah. When you can't cool off, you can sweat and sweat and sweat and you won't cool off. It's absolute misery. And so you basically just have to sit inside, or you have to get used to being consistently moist. And that's just not a life I wish for myself. You know?
No, I've been damp since June.
Yeah, right? And it's like you reach that point where it's like I was in Walmart the other day, and I walked past the seasonal aisle, and they're finally starting to bring out the fall stuff, and I was like, please, it can't come fast enough. I'm ready for it. I want brisk. I want the colors of autumn. I want the smells that come alongside the fall season, from school supplies to pumpkin spice-esque things. I'm not even a big I don't really like the flavor very much, but I like the smell. I want to crunch leaves under my feet. I want to carve jack-o'-lantern. It's time. Summer.
You're speaking my language.
We've had a brat summer. It's time to move on. It's time to move on. I'm ready.
We've had a brat summer. I drank more this summer than I have in many summers past. I've capped it now.
Okay.
I I feel like for some reason I've had a lot of like friends having parties, and it's been wonderful
Yeah.
and so much fun. I'm so glad I get to enjoy all of those great things. My God, do I need it to be fall? Like last night I watched Hocus Pocus with a friend who was visiting, and I think we were just like manifesting. And I live actually kind of close to Sleepy Hollow, the town,
Yeah.
like the real
Yeah, yeah.
town. And so we went to visit yesterday, and like all of their street signs have the headless horseman on them, and it's so
So
cute.
fun.
Yeah, and we were just walking around like, and one day it'll be cold. One day soon it'll be nice and cold. And we were so excited. We watched Hocus Pocus when we came home, just literally calling in the fall. Like I need it. I need it so badly. I'm so over this summer. But I'm trying to also not be a Grinch about it. I want to try and enjoy the last of these like very sunny days. I don't know. I need to find someone who has a pool. One of my friends has to have a pool that I can go to, because it's just not bearable any other way.
No, I mean, you basically have to be submerged up to your shoulders with like a White Claw or something to make it bearable outside right now. Like it's the point where I am where like even grilling in the evenings, you can't do it. It takes forever to cool off. It's not cool outside until it's like 1 a.m. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna be doing that. I'm simply not.
No way. Absolutely not. It's miserable. It's miserable. I'm so glad we're on the same page, because there's so many people who are summer girlies. Like my ex was a big summer guy. Like he just loved it. And I was like, I should have known. Sometimes opposites attract, and other times I should have known. I was like, oh, we're completely different people actually, because this is fun for you. I'm sweating.
Well, and like I can get on board with the summer vibe. I can get excited for summer when it's winter, and then it's like, oh, I'm really looking forward to like beach time, and like I'm ready for it to warm up. But every time we hit August, I'm like, bye. Like I'm love to see you come, love to see you go. Like it's time to be hitting that dusty trail. We're good. I've had my fill. Sayonara. We're satisfied with the heat this year. And climate change should make every year hotter and hotter. So it's like I can't even, what will next year bring? Even greater humidity and misery.
I've been saying that August is my version of like inclement weather, like when it's in the winter and there's a blizzard and people are like, inclement weather, let's not go outside. This is inclement weather. I'm not leaving my house.
And like I don't understand for the life of me how nations that aren't big on AC do it. Like I think they must just be built different. I think their metabolisms over time have acclimatized them to where they live, and they just don't feel it. Because it was like when I lived in the UK and the summer would start rolling around, I was like, yeah, I can't do this. Like I cannot do this. This is miserable.
I know. I have some friends who live in England, and I think about them all the time during this time of year. I'm like, honestly, thoughts and prayers to you at this time, because how are you doing this? Although I love Scotland, and in Scotland, even now, I think the highest the temperature is like maybe 75 degrees. Maybe. I'm like, that's 75 in August? Babes, we're moving.
Like, please. In Nairobi, where I was for a month just recently, it's like right now is their rainy season. So it was like 60 degrees in the day, and then maybe 55 at night. It was gorgeous. Phenomenal. And that's cold for them. So they're all in their parkas. They've got snow hats on, and they're wearing boots and gloves. And I was like, guys, no, this is great. Like I'm out in my t-shirts, and they're like, why are you wearing a t-shirt? And I'm like, you don't even know how hot it is back home. Like, I can't do it. But
I can't.
What else is hot and fun is taking calls. Like, how do you feel about that as a segue?
That was very good. I loved it. I usually just go with like a big deep breath, and I'm like, let's take some calls. So I love that you wrapped it up.
Yeah,
you did more than the big deep breath, and I appreciate it.
I feel like we could have batted that. We could have litigated that for longer, but I think it's time to move on the call. We have 6 people waiting on the line. Like we got quite a few people
lines are full.
Already.
Lines are full.
So it's time to get started. Now, the way I will remind watchers and viewers of a couple of things, especially if you might be new here. So this is Chewed Gum. We take all sorts of calls here, but we tend to prioritize theists here on the line, generally speaking, just because everybody likes a little idea clash, a little discussion in the marketplace of ideas, So we're taking theist callers first. If you're an atheist caller and you want to discuss stuff, please stay on the line if you're already there, or don't let that discourage you from calling. We will do our absolute best to get to everybody. I'm here, so the odds of us getting to everybody are high because I can't shut up. So we will probably get to everybody, but we're going to start with some theist callers, and we're going to go, I think, in order that they were received. So our first caller is Matt, pronouns he, him. He's from Georgia, and he's a theist, and he's got a question. He wants to know, what is virtue? And I would like to get a little bit of an elaboration on that, because that's kind of a philosophical, broad question. So Matt, can you hear us? And if you can you elaborate a little bit on your question?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you for having me on. It's a tough one to elaborate, and that's kind of why I'm asking almost. Because I notice things that are virtuous, right? I can see things that are virtuous, but putting them into words is so difficult, and that's kind of why I'm asking other people. Can I ask both of you what you would consider virtue to be? And maybe that'll give me a better idea.
So, sure. I mean, for me, when I think of virtue, right, I tend to equate it to like things that meet the higher end of my moral system. Characteristics, people, whatever. But because my moral system is, because I'm like a more or less, I believe morality is subjective, I understand that what is virtuous for me might not be virtuous for everybody. But at the same time, I recognize that pretty much every human society has converged on a couple of pretty key moral rules, independent of their religion, that seem to be like more or less the golden rule, right? Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, stuff like that. There are exceptions, but generally we see these features pop up in a lot of different societies. And so for me, virtue would be when we see someone take the morality that we subscribe to and go like above and beyond. Like, it would be virtuous to me in my moral system for somebody to do selfless acts, right? Do something that put their life at risk to save someone else, right? I would consider that to be virtuous. But again,
I thought
recognize.
I'm
go
so
ahead.
sorry. I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I thought of a definition as we were speaking, and I think it's a pretty decent definition. It's just behaving with high moral standards. Would that be acceptable?
Sure.
Sure.
It's such an abstract question too, because what is virtue? I took a trip, and I was asking just a lot of. I went to the city, basically Atlanta, and I was just stopping people, asking them that exact question: what is virtue? And I got a lot of different answers. But I guess at the heart of my question, what is the essence of virtue? Maybe I don't understand my question completely.
Matt, I have a question actually. What is the reason that you want to define this? Like, what is your motivation behind defining what virtue is?
That's a great question. I feel like, how would I describe it? There's no I'm not trying to trap you guys in some theist argument or anything. I'm more so, I guess the purpose. Would a purpose of asking be okay? Would that be sufficient?
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's more so I'm not entirely certain what virtue is for myself, and through other people's opinions, I can start to. I'm not very used to thinking. I'm not a very smart guy, and I try to take other people's opinions and kind of implement them into my own life, so that I may be or behave with a higher moral standard. Does that make any sense?
It does, and I think that actually does make you a smart person. You're trying to learn from those around you and build an opinion based on like other people's opinions, kind of feeling how you. And also, Matt, I don't think that I don't love that you're considering yourself not to be a smart person. I think that you probably are a lot smarter than you're giving yourself credit for. But I'm curious about why you're asking this question and why the answer is something you're seeking, like what it means to you to be able to define what virtue is. Because ultimately, like if Erica's saying, and I agree, that virtue and your moral standards are subjective, what virtue is to you is not going to necessarily be what virtue is to everyone else. And so I think it's actually smart that you're asking all of these other people, because then you can kind of get a feel for what virtue means to you. But ultimately, any answer that we give you is going to be our version of that as well.
That's okay. Okay. So what you're saying is it's something that I have to kind of maybe a collaborative effort between asking other people and looking introspectively is kind of the
yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's also interesting to even take a moment and think about why it's important to you to be able to define what virtue is. Because when this question came up, the first thing I thought of was, wow, I guess I actually have never really thought about like how I would define that word. It's never even crossed my mind to define that word. And so it's interesting that it crossed yours. And so that might even be something interesting to reflect on. Like, why is this even important for me to truly define? What does it mean? What will it mean to me when I can truly define that? It just might be interesting.
Absolutely. That's a really good answer. I can't really, I don't really have a follow-up. That's honestly being introspective. I try to be introspective as much as I can. And it sometimes eludes me is the best way I can put it. It's very difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
And I know, like I said before, I can name virtuous acts, but I guess at my core, you know, I don't quite know what virtue is to me. You know, I can take all the opinions of everybody else, but what is it to me? And I guess that's the most important question to answer, right? Because this is my life, just like it's your life, but it's my life. I'm experiencing my life, and that's a really important question to answer. I guess the purpose of the call really is to kind of talk myself through it as much as you two kind of talk me through it. It's like I'm not used to thinking. You know, I grew up Catholic, and you know, I'm not very used to thinking. So it helps to have some guidance as to how to think is the best way I can put it.
Well, I think it's just nice to bounce ideas off of other people, right? To, you know, as we were kind of just discussing, if, you know, to take a step sort of into our realm here, right? If morality is subjective, then you can get a decent idea as to what is more or less universally virtuous by everybody's subjective morality, or at least most people's subjective morality, by talking to people. Like, I bet if you asked every single person on the planet, the majority of people are going to be like, yeah, try to treat others as you would want to be treated. I feel like that would pop up a lot, right? Or don't kill for, you know, non-justifiable reasons, like self-defense or whatever, right? Things are going to pop up consistently that are morally consistent across a lot of different people. And I would bet that on the flip end of that spectrum, morals or moral actions that go above and beyond by everybody's subjective opinion, aka things that are virtuous by most people's, you know, takes, you're going to come across some commonalities as well, the more people you ask. And that might help you get a good idea as to, like, okay, well, where does that intersect with what you think is virtuous, or with what you don't think is virtuous?
That's a good point. So, that's a very good point. Yeah. It's just so difficult because the people I generally talk to and associate with don't want to have these conversations, like my close friends, right? And really, this is the first place that I've truly found that I can ask these questions and not be ridiculed or put down for asking these questions. It's even hard to do it in public because nobody wants to talk about big questions like this. So, I mean, it's a good outlet. And you two seem very smart, and all the other hosts seem incredibly smart, and I want to learn from you guys. So, I mean, that's a very good answer. I'm really going to have to reflect on this a bit, and I'll probably end up calling back within the next couple days, like normal.
Please do.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, that's great. That means you're doing exactly where human curiosity should lead you, right? That's taking you down the rabbit hole. That's where we tend to do our most most of our growth is when we're putting ourselves in these uncomfortable positions and asking ourselves these questions that maybe we haven't really broached before. So good on you for investigating and looking inward.
I greatly appreciate it. And thank you, too, for your time. And I hope the rest of your day goes swimmingly.
Of course.
Oh,
The feeling
likewise,
is mutual.
Matt.
All right.
Take
Take
care.
it easy. Thank you for your answers.
Of
Bye,
course.
Matt.
Bye-bye. Aw,
Gosh.
what a nice dude. What a pleasant, what a downright pleasant call to start off with.
That was so lovely.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. Okay, all right, let's get this trip. Oh, actually, let me ask you. What do you think? Do you want to take a more controversial call, or do you want to keep the kind and level-headed train going? What's your vibe?
I think we should go controversial because we could always come back down to earth with something a little bit more chill. But we also have to remember to remind everyone about super chats because we have not discussed that yet. So you can get your super chats in $5 or more. And I don't know if there's anything specific that we want you to share in our super chats. I'm trying to think. Sometimes we ask questions, but I can't think of any right now. Oh my God. I have a really funny one.
Okay, do it.
Okay. One of my friends recently asked me if you were to have, and this is coming from a whole group of girls who went to Catholic high school and are no longer Catholics. This is especially funny. In the Catholic Church, if you're not familiar, I imagine that many of you are, there are the sacraments, the body and the blood of Christ. And it's like this little wafer, and blood would be the wine, and they're symbolic and whatever. So if you were to have your own church, like the Church of Erika, what would be your sacraments? And I'll tell you right now, mine is a dirty martini and a white cheddar Cheez-It. Okay.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, here's mine. Mine is also very easy. I'm gonna go White Claw, the blackberry flavor, and then I'm gonna go a Nerds gummy cluster. That's gonna be my two.
Hell yeah.
So, it's a real sweet treat. You get real excited. You got to brush your teeth after you take the sacrament from my
indulgent, decadent.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, very decadent. Absolutely. Okay, I'm with you. I do think that we go controversial. So when you tell us your super chat, also feel free if you're like, oh, I kind of want to call in, but at the same time I'm nervous or, whatever, I don't feel like it. I don't want to wait on the line. You can also super chat those kinds of questions, and we are contractually obligated to answer any and all super chats to the best of our ability that are above $5. So ask away. We have to answer them. You got funny questions. You want to tell us about your sacrament. We'll mull it over. We'll litigate it. We'll talk about whether or not we think it's good. We'll talk about if we go to your church. So super chat in. We'll read them all at the end. It's gonna be great. And we're gonna get to our little controversial call here. I think this caller probably knows that they're hitting us with something a little controversial. So let me find it here. All right. Very nice. Okay, we have Anthony. Pronounce him. He's from Virginia. He's a theist. And he maintains that purity culture advances women's rights, which I think is a fascinating take that I would like to investigate. So, Anthony, can you hear us? Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You're coming in loud and clear. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on your sort of thesis statement there?
Yeah, so I saw the title of the video today is purity culture good for women? And I think it's good for everybody, and that would include women. But before I get started, I did actually just want to ask you, like, if you, both of you or either one of you, just wanted to briefly define what you conceive of as purity culture. I mean, you don't have to define it in all its details, but just kind of briefly, like, what does it look like?
Yeah, I think that's a super important way to start this off, because that was actually going to be my first move, was to say, how do you, Anthony, define purity culture? So, Alyssa, you want to go first? I took it first last time, so.
Sure. So I would say I would define purity culture as being a systematic way to prioritize the virginity of women, and so controlling their actions to make them appear to be or actually follow suit in being pure, virgin, prioritizing traditional values, I'm so bad at defining things like that, but that's off the top of my head what I would say. Erika, I feel like you're going to do a way better job.
Maybe. I mean, really, so I have a similar take, right? So prioritizing virginity and reducing what I would call sexual promiscuity, I think would be
Mm,
sort of additional parts of both men and women alike. But I would
mm,
propose that from a purity culture standpoint, if we're looking at it from like a sociological perspective, a lot of the roots of this stuff, even going back into like ancient cultures, not just biblical cultures, but other ancient cultures, even the male promiscuity, like being against male promiscuity, ultimately, I think can be tied back to keeping women from sleeping around.
right.
And the reason for this, from again a sociological and I would argue anthropological perspective, would be because men are trying to, one, ensure paternity, and two, sexual jealousy is a really, really big feature of our species. So when pair bonding can be sort of enforced like that, you kind of kill two birds with one stone. So I think that's kind of where purity culture is kind of like a modern uh, continuation of this older version of purity culture where like men could have multiple wives but women couldn't have multiple husbands, women weren't to sleep around but men were more or less
Right.
permitted to. So it's the prioritization of the virginity of both parties, but I think it's skewed female. And there's a whole host, Anthony, of characters that I think you could kind of lump into this. um,
Okay, that's really good. Yeah, that's actually kind of. I mean, I don't agree with the whole idea that it's just men trying to oppress women, but the idea that it's about sexual restraint and trying to not necessarily maintain like virginity all the way up to marriage, but if there is sexual interaction, it's in a relationship that's bordering on, you're going to get married and you're not having relations with multiple people at the same time, things like that. So as a theist, and there's a couple lines of argumentation I want to go now. Why this is beneficial for women and for society? Part of my philosophy is that the universe was designed by God such that when humans do the right thing, positive results will necessarily follow. And if people were to maintain sexual purity, and by that I mean basically be monogamous and only have, one partner, maybe for life, but definitely not many partners, every single STD on the earth would disappear within 2 to 3 generations. Okay, so that's one argument. So I think that, and I hear atheists saying like, "Oh, STDs are a curse from God." Well, think about it. If God wants us to be morally pure, and that results in all these diseases going away, to me that's a sign that God has designed things in a way that it will benefit us to do things like that.
Yeah, but then
That's my first
I have
argument.
2 questions. My first one is actually, no, I think I just have one question. There are many diseases that people get that have nothing to do with actions that they have performed. Like, for instance, a child who gets cancer. So it's not like every disease that exists is the result of being smited for some action. So when it comes to things like STDs, yeah, hypothetically, if people never have sex with anyone else aside from one person that they're going to get married to, then yeah, I guess you could eradicate STDs. There are some that get passed down through childbirth, though, so that's not completely not a possibility. I guess it would take a couple of generations, like you said. But my biggest problem with that and all of this is that it just would never. Humans like to have sex and they like to have new experiences. And so even within relationships that people are having that are perfectly happy and perfectly healthy, unless there's some novelty in their sex life, their desire for one another is going to fade. And so that takes constant maintaining, but it also throughout our lifetime, we are wanting things that are new. And so while I think, sure, like the STD argument is, I understand what you're saying. It feels similar to me as saying, like, well, if you get skin cancer from being in the sun, then you should just never ever go outside, and that's the solution, and no one will ever get skin cancer again. It's kind of like, yeah, but there's also a lot of joy and happiness and part of the human experience and human connection that we gain from having sexual experiences with one another. And people who have sex before they're married are more likely to have relationships that don't result in a divorce. So if you're wanting long-lasting, happy relationships, you should have sex before you're married, and you are more likely to have happy long-term relationships if you have sex with more than one partner.
So I'd like to kind of tack on to this a little bit, right? In a couple of different ways. So I agree hypothetically with you, Anthony. If everybody was like totally monogamous, you would eradicate most, if not all, STDs. But I think that you're also going to create some new problems, sort of along the lines of what Alyssa was talking about, where it's like you end up having people who get together who aren't sexually compatible, and then they end up having quite a few issues, right? Like relationship-wise, that causes them misery in other ways. And I think that that's weirdly enough almost longer term, in that it's going to plague that couple for the entirety they stay together, because we're presuming this is a perfect world where they're not going to split. Now I'm married. I intend on staying married to my husband for the rest of my life. I love him. He's my best friend, and I'm the type of person that it's never really been. I'm sheepish. I'm a sheepish person. It's never really been my vibe to like have multiple partners, because it's just not how I'm wired. And some people are wired like that, and some people aren't. The human variety is off the charts with regard to what we like and what we prefer romantically and sexually. So, there's a lot of different ways to be a human, is kind of what I'm getting at here. So while I would argue that you're correct in that you could eliminate STDs, I think you're going to create those additional problems by not giving people the option, or at least discouraging the option for people to. And I wouldn't phrase it like, oh, people are like sleeping around like willy-nilly or whatever, but it's like to have these different experiences with different people, and ensure that the people that they choose to settle down with are the people that they actually are compatible with romantically and sexually, as Alyssa said, to ensure that they're going to, or at least give them the best chance of staying together. And then the other problem I would sort of propose is that, as surefire as that would be to eliminate STDs, putting aside the other issues, it will never happen, because people, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we're not wired that way. From an anthropological or a primatological standpoint, we're what you would classify as monogamous, serially monogamous to polygamous, right? Like we fall all along that range. There are human societies that are polygynandrous, where men and women can have multiple wives or multiple husbands. There are some that are just polygynous, where one man can have a bunch of wives and one woman can't have multiple husbands. There are rare societies that are polyandrous. I believe there's a Tibetan group where a woman tends to marry all of the brothers of a single family. My God, can you imagine? And then there are societies that have a mixture, right? We have societies that are strictly pair bonded, right? But then those are also kind of serially monogamous, in that you'll have couples that will stay together for sometimes many years, and then they'll split, and then they'll find another pair bond for many years. And we see all of these conditions all across the animal kingdom. So it's not like it's completely out of the ordinary. Even some of our most beloved monogamous and pair bonded bird species, or gibbons or callitrichins or whatever, they're sneaking around a little bit, because that's how nature tends to work. Sometimes not, but sometimes yes. So what I'm trying to kind of getting at here in this long-winded roundabout way is that you would solve one problem but create several more. But I don't think that that's ever going to be something that's on the table, because you end up with this ultimate prisoner's dilemma, where you have a lot of people who are being forced into monogamous relationships that don't want to be, and they're really gonna buck against that, I think, and you're gonna end up creating even more sociological issues.
Okay. So basically what I'm hearing is that you agree with my premise, but the problem is that it's unrealistic, because people desire to have these experiences. And that's why we need to promote the notion of impulse control and the benefits of this, because I feel like what it's coming down to, want this pleasure or these experiences, and they're giving in when what they should be doing is waiting for someone special. And they're not, when you have these experiences, you're not fulfilling something deep. You're satisfying a basic instinctual urge. True happiness comes from finding someone special and connecting with that person, not
for you, maybe
experimenting. Well, no, I think I think it's true I think it's as universal that when people think that when they're having sexual experiences, they're happy, but what they're really doing is they're just getting a hit, and they're not making that real lasting source of happiness that comes from finding a single individual who is compatible with you.
So can I ask?
Go ahead.
Can I ask briefly? Yeah, I want to ask a quick question. Do you think that sexual compatibility is important for a healthy relationship?
Yes, I do.
Do you think that sexual compatibility is something that can be facilitated if you only have sex after you're married, or if you only have sex after several years within a relationship?
For me, I think that premarital sex is acceptable, but 99.9% of the time people do it, it's not for the right reason.
But it's not up to you to decide what the right reason is, because ultimately you can have sex before marriage because it's fun and it is good for your brain. It floods your brain with all of these wonderful, happy hormones, and it can be a really healthy experience. And you can also do those things and get tested for STIs and make sure that you're not passing them along to other people. We also know that for places that teach abstinence, specifically in the school districts in the United States, the states that teach abstinence are the states that have the highest rate of teen pregnancies and the highest rate of STIs. So ultimately, it doesn't work to tell people just not to have sex. What works is to teach them how everything related to sex works, and then give them the opportunity to have their own informed decision. And so I think ultimately, like, this isn't really about the education portion, but ultimately by telling people that, or discouraging people from having the experiences that they want to have, I think you're going to get more pushback, and it's not going to work in your favor. And we also have to remember that people have free will, and if that's something that they want to enjoy, then you should allow them to do that. It also helps them to be able to learn the things that they like about their own sexuality, so that when they find a partner that they want to have a more long-term relationship with, if that's something that they even want to do, because let's remember there's also people who are ethically non-monogamous and polyamorous, and there's a whole spectrum of sexuality and relationships that humans experience, like Erika was talking about earlier. If that's something that they want to do and have a monogamous relationship, now they're going into it and they have gained all of these tools of communication in the relationship aspect and, and in their sexuality, so that they can use those tools that they gained from previous experiences and create this really long-lasting relationship moving forward. They benefit greatly from being able to do that.
So if I may tack on briefly to that, right? So like I agree with what Alyssa is saying here, and I'm sort of coming at this from the perspective of someone who's like, I would wager that the relationship that I have, Anthony, is like right, straight-laced in line with what you would consider close to the ideal, right? I've been pretty committed. We're pretty committed to each other. I've been for several years. We got married, I've not had like a ton of experience with other people, so it's like that would be pretty in line. However, I can sit here and recognize a couple of things. One, what Alyssa says is completely correct. The variation of humans is quite broad. Two, that variation, when curbing has been attempted, even with very extreme punishments, still doesn't work. So when we've had societies that offer like the most intense corporal punishment for, sleeping around, if you want to call it whatever, having multiple partners or whatever, it doesn't tend to work, and it tends to have people almost go harder, right? Because it's like you're telling them that this is something that they can't have. It doesn't tend to see much success. So while I disagree sort of on a conceptual level with you that this is the best course of action, I'm also pushing back on you from a perspective of practically, I don't see a single time that this has ever worked historically. And even when we think it works historically, it tends to be like the I can't remember the exact species, but the songbird experiment, where we were like, this one species of songbird is the pinnacle of pair bonding. They mate for life, and they're doting, and they're wonderful, and they stay with each other from the moment they pair until one of them dies, and then the other dies of a broken heart. And then genetics came out, and we started doing genetics testing on the egg clutches that these little songbirds laid. And oh my goodness, everyone was sleeping around. Like, these songbirds were just like, they were really getting after it. And no one had any idea, because they were socially monogamous, but they were still maintaining and kind of going behind one another's back. Now, for me, like, if I'm one of those songbirds, I'm going to be crushed by that, right? Like, that would break my songbird heart. But that being said, like, a lot that works for a lot of people. That's a part of human variation, and it's something that seems to work quite well for many folks who identify as being polyamorous, or just folks who are not in a position to be serially, or to be rather to pair bond in that exact moment. So what I'm saying is, like, I empathize. I sympathize with where you're coming from. It works for me, but what works for me isn't going to work for everybody. And what works for you isn't going to work for everybody. And what works for Alyssa isn't going to work for everybody. And that's part of what makes being human so wonderful.
Well, let me address all of the arguments that you all have made by going this route. And you made some good arguments. Those people for whom it doesn't work, I would argue they need to change. Here's why. And my thesis was that purity culture advances women's rights. And I believe that because from the male perspective, when men view women in a sexually pure manner, they treat them a right way, they want them to be happy, and they don't oppress them. They don't violate them. They treat them with respect. Whereas if you view women as if men specifically view women as sexual objects, that's when control happens. That's when the desire to restrict the woman and her choices comes into play. Whereas a sexually pure mindset says, this woman needs to be respected. She's a child of God, and we can't do anything to harm her. So I'll just say that. They need to change. They need to change their mindset.
Hey, Alyssa, you are muted right now. She's still muted. Sorry, Anthony. Hold on. I also have thoughts, but Alyssa is excited.
Okay.
So
Okay. Am I back?
Yeah, you're good. You're there.
Okay. I was going to say, I think if you're thinking about if I'm sexually pure or not, you're still sexualizing me. And you're sexualizing me in a way where you've already taken away my choice and my free will. So I think you already are viewing me as this object that has lesser value because if you're viewing me as what you're saying as a sexual object, as a person who's had sex with more than one person, you're viewing me as a lesser person. Why? There's no reason. And there's no moral value that is assigned to sex and the amount of people that you have. That's something that we've made up as a society, but it doesn't actually mean anything. Like if you're viewing me as a person who is sexually pure, you're still thinking about my sexuality, which means you're still sexualizing me while also preferring that I'm not expressing free will, which is controlling me and controlling my choices.
I'm going to draw as well. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, that's what I wanted to say. I mean, I'm familiar with women who have, as much sex as they want with whoever they want, And I'm going to say a lot of them don't look very happy. They look
But
like
that's your interpretation.
No, that's the truth. They're not happy. They're looking for something. They're looking for love, and they think they find it in sexual experiences, and that's not where it's found. It's part of it, but that's not the end game. That's not the end goal. That's not.
I would like you to talk about your own experiences though, and not other people's, because those people aren't here, and so I can't draw on, and you can't draw on their experiences and what makes them happy and not happy. It's too hard to argue.
Well, and I think as well, if I may, on
That's
that,
fair.
Alyssa, right? I can call on anecdotal accounts in my own life of people who, are extremely sexually active and have sex with a lot of people who are women, and they are quite happy. Or, yeah, I mean, this was back in my college days. So it's like when I knew them, they were quite happy. It's like, it's playing tit for tat with anecdotes, I don't think gets us forward anywhere, because you can't evaluate what me and Alyssa are saying with our experiences, and we can't evaluate what you're saying with these experiences that your friends have had. So I will sort of co-sign what Alyssa said here and say, like, maybe we stick to experiences that we can all validate in order to try and stay objective, even though I know this is a subjective topic.
Okay. Well, I want to go back to something that I feel like this was sort of addressed, but not really, which is that I feel like men have more sexually impure thoughts about women than women do about men. I might be wrong about that, but what I'm saying is when men view women as sexual objects, it's not good for women. Men
but that's
should
a
view
man
women...
problem, not a woman problem.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. But we're talking about purity culture. Purity culture, I know it's specifics about, how women behave, but it involves men too. And it's a mindset everyone has. It's about how do we view sexual relationships and what's the best for society. And when you have a society that overemphasizes the sexual experience itself over true, like what I would call true love, you have a society where men are trying to control and dominate women for sexual pleasure. And it's not good for them, and it hurts them.
So, Anthony, I was going to say this earlier, but just dropped something. Agree with what Alyssa said, but at the same time, right, your original call was about how purity culture helps women's rights, generally speaking. So, maybe it is true that men have more impure thoughts, whatever, about women than vice versa. I don't know. I'm not in every dude's head out there, and I'm not in every woman's head out there. I'm only in my own head. So what I'm going to kind of draw us back to here is just from a bird's eye view here, if we look at societies that exist today across the board, and if we look at societies in the past through time, back to the first hunter-gatherers at whatever Göbekli Tepe 300,000 years ago in Jebel Irhoud or whatever, right? We can see there are different societies that have different sort of thoughts on sexual impropriety, if you will, in males and females alike, right? And so we can see how they treat women. We can see what their views were of sex, and we can look at what their views were about pair bonding and how strong the relationships within and outside of marriage were, and who can have how many spouses, whatever. And I'm going to make a pretty decent generalization that I think I can back up if given a moment, which is that societies that prioritize purity culture are overwhelmingly more oppressive for women, even down to the legal system, right? I think of Middle Eastern societies today that have very restrictive rules on what women can do and when they can do them, and they have quite a purity culture. I think of the United States 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and where our purity culture was then, and the rights that women had to fight tooth and nail for, going all the way back 100 years ago with the right to vote. I look back and compare that to societies of ancient Greece and Rome and Egypt, where purity culture, compared to some of these examples that I just gave, was much lighter, and women could do things like own property or, have multiple spouses, depending on the ancient culture that you're looking at, and get divorced and all sorts of things. So I think you can draw a generalization there that the stronger the purity culture, the fewer rights women have, because the focus turns not to protecting women, but to guarding them. It becomes like a nationwide mate guarding scheme where it's you have to keep eyes on women and what they're doing at all times from a sexual perspective, or else they're gonna get out from under you. And sexual jealousy again underpins a lot of human society and a lot of domestic violence, I would argue, across the spectrum. So when you prioritize something like purity culture, women aren't put on a pedestal because they're treated like queens. They're put on a pedestal because they're treated like objects. And I think that that's a dangerous game to play. Do you see what I mean?
Said.
Yeah, okay. You make some good points about some of these cultures who control women, and that's true. I guess it's kind of like you hear some of the communists saying, "Well, they've never really tried communism." I would argue maybe they haven't really tried pure. The real purity culture, where I don't see an inherent conflict between sort of monogamy and everyone, restraining themselves until a compatible match is found, and women having freedom to make choices of their own. I don't think that there's an inherent conflict there.
But if their choice is to have multiple partners, whether that means they want multiple partners all at once or they want multiple partners before they find one long-term one, like if that is their choice, then you are infringing on their choice, that alone. And also, we have yet to have a period of time where, and Erika might even be able to speak to this more, but humans don't really only have one partner from the second they're sexually active forever and ever and ever. Like, that is so incredibly rare that that's what happens. So it is ultimately what you're asking for is just impossible. It's just not going to happen. There's no way that the first time we ever have a sexual urge in any way, shape, or form, we pick the right person that we're going to have, and that's the only sexual interaction we have for our lifetime. It's just not realistic. So I would so much rather be realistic and allow people to exercise their free will and their whatever desires that they have sexually in a way that is safe and that is informed, so that they can make safe choices. Like, that is so much more simple to me. I don't want to control people's actions. I want them to be informed when they make the choices that they do, so that we can keep people safe and that we can make sure that we're building relationships that are long lasting if that's what they want to do. I would so much rather do that and provide people tools and resources so they can build long-lasting, healthy relationships versus saying, let's control our urges and suppress people's desires. That sounds really oppressive and really controlling. And also has not worked.
Well, the reason it's not working is because of your attitude. You don't want to accept this because people
as a whole want to have choices. Anthony, you're saying that we need to strip people's choices. You want to strip people's choices so that men don't have to sexualize them? You're telling me that my attitude, which is to want people to make choices that make them feel good and feel happy and not feel oppressed, is the reason why purity culture is not healthy for women. And that just it's so bizarre for me to hear you say that. To say that my attitude around wanting people to make choices that they prefer for their life, to make them life is so short, Anthony. You want people to make choices like that, like to only have sex with one person to what end? For what reason? Why can't people just have sex with who they want to, get tested for STIs, and not spread those? And then maybe men who have sexual thoughts about people they shouldn't be having sexual thoughts about, mind their fucking business and keep it to themselves. How about that?
I mean,
why do women have to be the ones that have to control our urges, but men are allowed to look at women and decide whether they're sexually pure or not, and then make a judgment based on if they are morally valuable? Why is that okay? But it's not
Because
okay for me to
when
say,
women,
I want to have sex with more than one person, get tested in between so I'm not spreading a disease because that makes me happy. That's not acceptable, but it's acceptable for you to say, because that person had sex with more than one person, morally and ethically, they are less valuable to me.
I think that there's a correlation between a society's sexual promiscuity and basically the quality standard of life in society. In my opinion,
People who have more
and
sex
I'm talking
are
voluntary.
happier.
Hold on, hold
People
on.
who have more
Let me
sex
let
are
me finish. No,
happier.
no, they're not.
So there is a
No, they're
positive
not.
correlation.
That's
Yes,
not
there
true.
is.
That's not true.
Link me a study, Anthony.
Let me kind of get in here, Anthony, because I heard you say something there that I can speak to. You talk about sexual promiscuity and like the health of the nation. I truly do think ancient nations like Rome and Greece and Egypt, and even some nations in Central and South America and in sort of the East, would beg to differ, right? Where they had extremely loose like standards when it came to like, oh, this is the only type of sexual relationship that is appropriate, right? And we're talking about some of the longest living nations or empires, I guess you would put it, of all time, right? I mean, you might, I feel like you're sort of working with the sample size of one here, right? You're saying, well, the UK or the United States, I like these kinds of societies that I live in. I think they would be better if people were less promiscuous. And so as a result, I'm going to go ahead and say that they are less healthy because of that and would be more healthy if they did things my way. But I would argue that looking to the rest of history, that doesn't bear out.
Well, let me say this. I was reading a Christian theologian. I can't remember who it was, but I remember reading. He said that in Rome, that there was a period of 500 years. This is obviously probably before like recorded history, but where there was not a single divorce in Rome for 500 years. And this thinker thought that the collapse of society he was seeing was a result of the degeneration of society's sexual morality.
Baby boy,
The
they also
idea
used to literally
the
slaughter
people-
each other in amphitheaters for entertainment in ancient Rome. So, like, I'm not really trusting the way that they would structure parts of their society. It's like, just because there weren't divorces during that period of time didn't mean that people didn't, like, separate from one another, didn't mean that people weren't happy. It doesn't mean that it could be that people were, instead of divorcing, they were literally slaughtering their partners. And also, ancient societies have nothing to do with how we behave right now.
Well, if I may add to that, right? Like, there are societies today where you're not allowed to get divorces, right? Like on the surface of the earth today. And I don't think that those are the societies that are known for being like super free or having like a ton of rights. And the reason that they don't allow divorces is because, they have very strong purity culture roots, and they want to maintain. It's kind of like when, gosh, I said this last show too, and I'm pretty sure I got the country wrong. There was some country that was like, we don't have any gay people in our whole country, and it's like, oh, I don't believe that. I don't think that that's
Iran.
True. Yeah, okay, Iran. Yeah, you get it, right? Like, I don't think that that's true. So I look at these nations that don't allow divorces, and I don't think, wow, they're clearly doing something right because nobody's getting divorced. I think they're not allowed to get divorced, and there's probably a lot of really miserable people. So I can't speak to the example that you've given with Rome. I don't know enough about Roman history to speak to that. But what I will say is that I don't know that my brain is immediately going to, wow, they were all so happy that none of them got divorced, especially because Rome is kind of known for their non-monogamous relationships throughout the history of the empire. So I would say that I very much doubt that was what was going on when we think of like, oh, they didn't get divorced. No, I bet they're probably just finding different outlets. You know what I mean? But again, I can't even speak to the truth of that because I don't know enough about Roman history. And, Alyssa, I'll add too, like, because, we're talking about like, oh, well, like, why do these ancient cultures matter? I agree that it's like, we shouldn't set our standard of what we should do based off of ancient cultures. And Anthony, that goes for our conversation as well. I'm not trying to say, oh, because Egypt did this or because Greece did that, we should do it. I'm more pointing to a correlation like, oh, well, when we look through space and time, purity culture isn't exactly correlated with massive amounts of women's liberation. And indeed, most cultures where women had a lot of freedom, you can see that freedom extended to them sexually and romantically, where it's like they're not in these arranged marriages that their fathers have to approve of. They're not one wife out of 10 wives. And then the women can't have multiple husbands if they want to, right? Like they tend to have a lot more freedom. And I agree with Alyssa that it's like the more freedom that people have to make the choices that they want to make, the happier they tend to be. Now, if you want to say, oh, I want a society that does purity culture right, like not all of these other purity cultures. My next question is like, okay, like how would you go about doing that? Like how would you go about like creating an incentive that is so strong that it bucks a large portion of human nature, like what it is that makes us human. Because, Alyssa talked about earlier, like humans, a lot of people talk to me because my background is human evolution and, primatology and things like that. So I get a lot of questions like, oh, well, humans are naturally polygynous or humans are naturally monogamous. No, humans are just all across the board because there's so many of us and there's so much variation and there's so many different ways to be human depending on your background and your culture and your individual personality traits and who's involved and all of that good stuff that we can't be easily pigeonholed into a single type of mating system. I would propose that most people are probably monogamous or serially monogamous, but that doesn't mean that polygyny or polyandry or polyamory, like multiple people in the same relationship, is outside of the realm of human variation. And the reason I wouldn't propose that is because we see the opposite, and we see people in these types of relationships that are quite happy. So my TLDR here is humans are weird. I would be curious to hear what kind of purity culture you would create that would be that would offer the same liberation of multiple choices and women's rights that we see today in the society that we have now. Because I haven't seen it successfully done. And I'm sorry, I tend to ramble. Sometimes you just got to interrupt me.
Let me finish here because I think I've been going on for a while. Let me make 2 points, and I'm not going to say anything after that, and I'll listen out to what you all have to say to it. But I think the conversation here is you all are viewing purity culture as something that's forced on people. And what I'm trying to say is maybe we should move to a purity culture where it's voluntary. And I think that your attitude, specifically Alyssa, is preventing that from happening. And second of all, you asked, hold on, I'm just going to, one more point. You asked, how will we go about doing that? And I would argue that I bet if people believed that this is how God wanted them to live, that would be a pretty strong motivator. And I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay.
Anthony, thank you for calling, and thank you for the chat. I think what we'll do here, Alyssa, just so we can keep from getting in like another tornado of chatting because we have so many calls still. Anthony, I'm going to draw up your call, and then Alyssa's going to say what she wants to say, and then we'll probably move on to another call. Right? So thank you for calling. Appreciate it. The good conversation. I do love it. Call back anytime, and I look forward to the utopia, the purity culture utopia that you're working on and planning. Thank you. Alyssa, you were going to say. Go ahead.
Okay. My first thing is I could give a crap about what God wants because I don't believe that he's real in the way that Anthony is proposing that he is. And that's like the biggest issue is it's like if your biggest argument here is that, well, I think if people knew that that's what God wanted, okay, but not everybody believes that. So you're trying to create a culture based on a belief that not everybody has. And this is why free will is important. And this is why you can't thought police people and promoting purity culture is it's just always going to be garbage because you just have to let people do what they want to do and allow them to be informed while they do it. And then I don't remember the other thing that he said. It was about my attitude that the reason why people are not interested in purity culture has something to do with my attitude. I don't remember. While he was talking though, I did also do some some Googling, and there was a study that was done, and I think this is the Kinsey Institute, but it's accumulated in a bunch of other research. So
like
I believe
study.
Yeah, that's the one.
Meta-analysis.
Yeah, girl. They did a 3-week study of 152 college students. Not a huge sample, but whatever. And they were having sexual activity every single day, and they found much more meaning in their everyday life. They had levels both positive, happy, and excited increase over that period of time. And that had like a halo effect for 1 to 3 days. So I feel like he keeps going on about how it's not good for people to be having sex. And I just was repeatedly saying that it was. And that's like a very baby thing that I just found quickly, but there's other research that shows that sexual activity is good for you, and being able to learn how to be sexually intimate with yourself and with other people is good for you and benefits the future of your relationships. So just let people do what they want. At the end of the day, my biggest like gripe with everything that Anthony had to say is mind your fucking business. Why? What do you care what someone else is doing? If you want a partner that has not had sex before marriage or before they've had sex with you, fantastic. Find that partner. It's just not your business what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, and like I don't know, like I kind of took a different angle on it than you did, but sort of in the same vein of what you were just saying now, and like you touched on this at the beginning. Like I thought your sunscreen example was perfect. Your sunburn example was perfect. It's like, yeah, sunburns are bad. And going out in the sun can be good for you. So there's a medium there where you can go out in the sun and not get sunburned. But the solution to sunburns is not stay inside and never go outside. Just like the solutions to STDs isn't everybody on the planet must only have one partner. That is the only way we can get rid of STIs. It's like, I feel like there are better ways to get around this that don't involve pruning massive aspects of what it means to be human, right? Like our nature, what we get joy out of. I mean, like, is it healthy for me to eat whatever, a hamburger every day? It's like, probably not. Is it healthy to have a couple of hamburgers like every now and again? Yeah, that's healthy. It's like there's mediums here that you can reach that just is, I don't know. It's a tough sell for me. And then I'm also wondering, like, how on earth, how do we get this utopia? Where's the incentive? Is it like, I mean, how are you getting people to read? I guess it's more of like, it comes from internally, but then that's also from a religious perspective. What are you going to convert everybody? Like, that's a tough sell as well.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm like, at the end of the day, what are we even talking about? Because if people not everybody is going to align with what his ideal of a god is. So that's out the window. Like even if it's from the angle of like respecting the religions that other people want to practice, it's not my business what other religions people want to practice. So like if that's what you want to do, fine. Like, so disrespecting people's ability to make choices on their belief system, disrespecting their ability to make choices on their sexual preferences, just let people decide. That's the whole thing. Is it's like you're trying to push this like this utopia, this purity culture utopia. It's just not going to happen without impeding on people's free will. And there are so many people who have happy, healthy relationships that are polyamorous, or there are people who are not interested in sexual intimacy whatsoever and are perfectly happy and totally fine. There's a wide spectrum. Just let people do what they want. And now your morals and values for a partner that you want in the future, and then mind your fucking business about everybody else.
So I have the perfect call to transition from this conversation for you. And this one's like right up your alley. So I'm gonna go with this. This person's been waiting for a while anyways, and I need to get more water, and this is a call that is like tailor-made for you. This is Alice. She's from Utah. She's an atheist. She wants to know, are some kinks unhealthy or problematic? And then she lists some examples like cheating, non-con, dub-con, etc. So this is a interesting question and not one that I am qualified to answer. So hold on just a second, Alice. You are on Chewed Gum, and let me just make sure I can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Perfect. This is
wonderful.
Elaborate a little bit on your question, and then y'all go to town. I'm gonna get some more water. I'll be right back.
Hi, Alice.
Hi. Trying to be, I guess, slightly vague, just because I don't want to, like, I guess, out myself. But I work in a community that has a lot of kink interest, and kind of just, and also some of, like, the ones I listed are also personal kinks, and kind of wondering if there's a line, or should there be a line of what's considered healthy and what, like, is it problematic to fantasize about cheating on a significant other, or fantasize about being brutalized or taken advantage of, or being in a, like, dubious consent kind of situation, like, either as like me individually as a person, or in engaging in that with other people and that kind of play.
Well, if so, some of the examples that you were giving, non-con is non-consensual, right? I just want to make sure that I'm right. And okay,
and dubcon is dubious consent.
Okay, so the thing with any sort of sexual activity, and especially in the kink space, is that you ultimately, all of it should be informed, and all of it should be consensual. And so I'm not, to be also completely candid, I'm not super well versed in all kink spaces. So I'm curious if you could explain a little bit about the non-con and dubcon specifically, partially for the people listening, and also kind of partially for me, because you would know more about the details of that. And the reason that I want to know is because even for things like people who have and I think this, I'll give this as an example because I think this will sort of answer your question. There are people that have fantasies of sexual assault, and I've had people ask me before what my thoughts are on that. And my thoughts are, when people are typically participating in those fantasies, there is a conversation that happens ahead of time where there actually is consent given, and everything else that happens afterwards is sort of like playing into the fantasy, almost like acting, and you're almost like tricking your nervous system into believing that you're engaging in that activity. But you know in reality that you have safe words, and there are other things to safeguard you from actually experiencing harm. I have no problem with people engaging in that type of sexual activity if it is actually consensual, and that there is a conversation that happened ahead of time to prepare everyone to be safe and informed of the specific things that are going to happen in that sexual interaction. But I would like a little more detail.
That was kind of the non-con would be fantasies of sexual assault.
Got it. Okay.
And then, like, dubious con would be kind of like you're trapped in a room with just you and some guy, and he's, kind of pressuring you, and you don't really say anything. And then, so, like, you don't say no, but then, like, are you saying yes? And so it's, unspecified. But and that's all in the space of fantasy and, like, with story writing or pictures or whatever.
I think all of that is totally fine. And what I think is really interesting is that sometimes I think if you are not super informed or involved in kink spaces, or just like in whatever sex education space, it's hard to understand the amount of communication and the amount of conversation that happens in those spaces when you're trying to set something like that up. And I feel like the conventional sex community, like the people who are just doing, non-kink in their day-to-day life, could learn so much from the way that kink-informed spaces have conversations around sexuality. Because whether it's kink-related or it's not, there's an acronym that I think I don't remember who started it, but there's an acronym called FRIES, and it's for like healthy sexual interaction. So it's freely given is the F, R is reversible, I is informed, E is enthusiastic, and S is specific. And that should go for every sexual activity that you have, whether it's in the kink space or it's not. But people who are in kink spaces have so much more practice because it's necessary.
No, I totally agree. I guess the reason for calling is I've personally having those fantasies is very exciting in the moment, but afterwards I almost not that I feel guilty, but I kind of almost like like, should I be enjoying this? Because like it feels like anti-feminist to want to be in those situations, and like obviously against my own interest, and it feels like a weird gray area. That
I feel like I just gotta recommend something. You really need to watch the ContraPoints video on Twilight that came out a couple of months ago. It's not actually about Twilight. It talks a lot about the concept that you just now discussed, and the general argument boils down to, which I found this to be very interesting, is that a lot of women have these types of fantasies, and in part, the argument goes is that it can be traced back to the fact that for a long time, women haven't been allowed to enjoy sex and to want to have sex, and so those kinds of situations allow a woman to enjoy sex without having to ask for it, right, and without having to push for it and sort of frame what she actually wants, and so it's sort of like a safe framing device for women to be interested in being sexually active.
Right. It's not their fault that they had sex. It's somebody else's fault.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And like, I don't know enough about that subject to really speak to it, but I thought it was an interesting perspective that I had never heard before. So you should check that video out. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I've
watched ContraPoints, but I've been out of town all summer, so I'm very behind on my YouTube watching.
Yeah, but like, no, you shouldn't. The bottom line is like, you shouldn't feel bad about that. Like, you shouldn't feel bad about any of that. Don't let yourself fall into that trap. I mean, people are people. Like, as long as, I mean, this isn't my space, but yeah, you take it away, Alyssa.
The other thing too that's so interesting is there's a book. Oh, God, I have to see if I could find it, or if I could at least think of the title. I know it's by Justin Miller. God. If I can find it on my like little Goodreads thing, I'll tell you exactly the name of it. But he had done this really extensive surveying for years to write this book, for the purpose of writing this book, and it's about sexual fantasies. And one of the things that he concluded was that people who are like the people's political party affiliation also was related to some fantasies that they had. And they found that people who were conservative and Republican were more likely to have fantasies about polyamory, about cheating, about things that are not conservative ideals. And then people who are liberal have fantasies related to sexual assault, things like that. So what we're doing is we're craving novelty. We're craving something that's new and that's exciting. And another part of it too is, especially, well, I'm having so many thoughts now. Another part of it is when we are going into an arousal state and we're trying to really sink into these moments, we can sometimes have a hard time detaching from our everyday life. And what better way to detach from everyday life than to do something that is so radically outside of what our day-to-day is like? And so many women have fantasies of being dominated. Many times the women who have fantasies that are of being dominated are mothers and mothers with children. And that's because they make so many decisions throughout their everyday life that the last thing that they want to do when they are going to be having sex with someone and actually enjoying themselves is make another fucking decision about what they're going to do there. And so
it totally makes sense. I'm a mom, so I get that. Yes.
Okay. You know, so that's definitely a part of it too. I think it's just wanting to sink into moments and really, really enjoy them in a way where we can disconnect from every part of what our reality is. Also makes it easier for us to not get distracted. And a lot of the times when we're having sex, that's like one of the number one things that I hear is like, I feel like I can't orgasm because I can't stay focused and I can't stay in the moment. And in those very intense kink sessions or kink spaces, you are kind of forced to stay in the moment because you're engaging in this like very high risk fantasy, and you're really like, it's sort of the difference between like going to your local amusement park and going to like Space Mountain. It's like if you're in Space Mountain, you are definitely not thinking about like the taxes that you have to do by the end of the year. But if you're at like the local water park, you might still be kind of thinking about the taxes. So like it's really pulling you out of your everyday life. And so I'm going to see if I could actually find the name of that book, because you might really enjoy it, just because he does, like, literally the entire book is him just sharing his findings from that study. And you would be really surprised. It's pretty much like a lot of the time our sexual fantasies are us playing out the exact opposite of what our everyday life is. And it's something like two-thirds of adults oh my gosh, 2/3 of adults don't act on the sexual fantasies that they have. And it's over 95% of women have sexual fantasies of being dominated. So you're like so within the normal scope of the dom sub. What's it called? I guess category. That's the one.
Right.
Erika's here for all my big words,
on
baby.
This
I love it.
That's what I'm here for. I'm just here to provide words and recommend consequence videos. I'm useless other than that here.
I love it.
On the flip side, so that makes sense on the female woman side of that. But on the flip side, what about men having fantasies of being the dominator? Like, could that is that potentially dangerous, or is that just like they have to just kind of understand that this is okay in this sphere with actual given consent? Or
yeah, I personally don't ever really want to police people's sexual fantasies, because if they're staying in a place where everything is within a conversation of consent, then I have no problem with what people do. And I feel like that's one of the few spaces where the thoughts that you have don't have to be, I mean, I can, now that I'm saying it, I'm like, I could think of a few that are definitely problematic. But for things like dominating a person in that way, it's so common. And it's kind of, I also think for men dominating women and women being subservient to men, I also think that's sometimes because that's like the dynamic that we see played out so often. And when people are given the opportunity to flip that story, they might actually really enjoy the inverse. But we don't really play around with that as much, and we just fall into these like kind of roles that we think that we would enjoy best. And so maybe this is an opportunity to, at some point, maybe that is something that you want to try. But if that's what you're enjoying and it's fun for you, there's no reason for why you should stop doing it. And if those behaviors exist only within the sexual experience, then I see no problem with it. If it starts to bleed out into other things, then it sort of is, it's violating the specificity of that little FRIES acronym. It's violating where we've been specific about the things that we enjoy, where the consent is freely given, it's reversible. Like all of those things make it so that it's safe, it's in a contained space. And if it starts to bleed out into other things, then that's like a different conversation.
Right. This is making me think of a side topic, but maybe that's for another call, and maybe more of like a explanations video. Of like if you have certain kind of like, I don't want to say like out there, but like, you know, more extreme kinks than, you know, your basic vanilla stuff, how to approach that with a partner, of how to broach that subject of like, hey, I'm interested in this, are you, you know, without them. Because like I've definitely read stories of, you know, either side saying like, either partner being like, hey, I'm interested in this, how are you? And they get completely disgusted and turned off, and, you know, it can end relationships.
Yeah. So. Well, I think sometimes like people get really scared about kinks. And I think part of it is because because it's a new environment, it's a new conversation. And I think people feel nervous about, especially with sex, because it's so vulnerable. They feel nervous walking into a space where they're like, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do any of that. But once they're able to like dip a toe in the water, they might actually experience parts of it that are fun. And so it could be a conversation of like, hey, I'm really interested in exploring something new. And if it makes you feel nervous, we don't have to do a lot, but here's something really small that we can try first. Like maybe it's like new language that you introduce. And if there are, especially if you can get specific with phrases that you like, that person can like literally regurgitate to you, that can be helpful, so that they can kind of get like in the frame of how it works. Another part of it too is when we're in an arousal state, our brain functions very differently than it does when we're not. So it's almost like I always think about a brain just being like cold and just hard when we're just like in our everyday life. But when we start to get into our arousal state and we get all of these hormones flowing, our brain gets like squishy and soft, and we're able to allow our minds to go to places that it wouldn't have before. It's kind of like, because we're accepting the context of the situation. So it's like if you were flirting with somebody and they like blew on your neck, you'd be like, ooh. But if you're just like in the kitchen and you're making a coffee and someone just blew on your neck, you'd be like, what the fuck? Get away from me. Oh my God.
Right. For sure.
It's very context dependent, and our arousal and our reaction to those types of things is super context dependent. So it might even be a good idea to have like a little foreplay happening and then maybe introduce some new language. And then afterwards you can talk about it and see how they feel. The phrase that I always say people should use is, you know what I think would be really fun? And if they feel like that, if their immediate reaction is, I don't want to do that, then you can say, that's totally fine. Maybe one day we can talk about like watching some kind of, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the real word. So watching some corn.
Right.
Ethical corn, perhaps, adult entertainment, where you can see those situations being played out. And I would also recommend, if you do that, watching that after there's been some foreplay and you get like the arousal systems going, so that you don't risk the lack of context, like shocking them out of wanting to be interested in it. Because I really think people would be more interested in these things if they were introduced in a way that felt safe and loving and just out of interest and fun. I think people are just nervous because it's new.
Right. There's a comic that goes around in my community often. That's like a guy at a computer, and the first time he's like, "Oh, people are into this," and he stares it up closer and he's like, "Crap, I think I'm into this."
Yeah, that's exactly it. That is exactly it. It's like tickling. Like, I mean, I don't like really know that anyone like loves tickling, but if you're out and you're like flirty with someone and you're on the couch and you're watching a movie and they like tickle you a little bit, you're like, hee, stop it. But if you're out and a stranger tickles you in the grocery store, like, I'm decking them. Like, there's no way they're making it out of the grocery store alive. It's just very context dependent. So that would be my suggestion. Get good context, maybe see about some adult entertainment that could help give them a little more information, and also vet it ahead of time so that you're showing them something that's like sort of what you're interested in. And they're not going into like the Wild West. And start really small. Start with language, start with a toy. And just have discussions along the way, checking in as much as you can. And if they're really not interested in it, then they're not interested in it, and then that can be a different conversation, about what you want to do after that. You have to honor whatever they're interested in, but I think there are ways to like ease into it all.
Right.
It sounds like you have fun, girl.
I think I do, yes.
Hell yeah. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you. That was just a very good conversation.
Yay. I'm so glad. Thank you for calling. I'm going to look and see if I could also find that book too. And I'll just say it out loud when I find it.
I'll keep an eye on the live chat.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for calling, Alice. Have a good night.
Yep, thank you. You too.
Thank you very much. All right. Sweet. Okay. I think, golly. Okay. So you have a hard stop. You want to try one more? Or you want to move? Yeah.
No, yeah. Let's do one more. Also, I'm sweating. I'm turning my air conditioning on. Oh. Also,
okay. Let me see what we got.
The name of the book.
The name of the book, by the way.
Okay. The name of the book is "Tell Me What You Want" by Justin J. Lee Miller, and I'll put it in the chat too. It's a great book. It's so interesting.
So, gosh, I hate to do this, but we have our last caller has actually been on the line for the longest. They're
Okay.
also a theist, so I think we got to go with preference for that. My other atheist callers, thank you so much for calling in. Depending on how fast this goes, you can wait if you want to, but I don't know that we're going to get to you. We have Giddy, pronouns he, him, from Utah, and he's a theist. And his question is a pretty good one, I think, to end on, hopefully uplifting. Will religious organizations become more accepting of LGBTQ+, women's rights, etc., as the more tolerant generation replaces leadership over time? So I hope that this is going to be optimistic. Giddy, would you like to tell us a little bit more, or did I do you justice there?
I practiced that for like an hour straight. Yeah. No, you did great.
Good. Wonderful. Gosh, okay, so I have thoughts on this. I tend to be pretty like chill when it comes to religious folks who are respecting of other people's perspectives and who are science affirming and all of that kind of stuff. I wouldn't classify myself as an anti-theist. So from my perspective, I hope what you have described is what's coming down the pipeline. I know that I know many Christians and folks of many other different religious backgrounds in my life who are exactly that. They embody kindness and compassion, and they love science, and they bear that out in their everyday life. And the churches that they go to are wonderful. There's an Episcopalian church near my house that has like their pride flag, their solar panels, and their BLM sign outside. So and I'm always like, right on, those guys are welcome every day of the week here, So I hope that's what's going to happen. Now, that being said, what I have noticed in my experience is a very bizarre schism that seems to be happening in religious communities that at least I interact with here online, which is that you've got one group of like the super chill, wonderful people, and they're going one way. And then you've got this weird pocket of very extreme individuals who are very hardline going the opposite direction, doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on their perspectives that I would classify personally as pretty hateful. And the people who are kind of in the middle are sort of left to choose, right? Do they want to go this more sort of progressive Christian route, or do they want to go to this more extremist side of things? And the reason I kind of frame it like that is I feel like the churches that span the gap are becoming less common, and it's almost making people pick one way or another. So I think what we're going to see as we move forward is a large group that is as you describe, but unfortunately I think we're also going to see a large group that are doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on these ideologies that are kind of shitty, for lack of a better term. What do you think, Alyssa?
I agree. I'm always kind of shocked by the community that is doubling down on those really traditional values. I'm shocked by it mostly because at least like the Catholic Church is what I'm most personally familiar with, and so that's what's easiest for me to like really kind of compare to. I'm always shocked by the lack of tolerance in those communities because Jesus was supposed to be an extremely tolerant person. And so I'm always confused by how like Jesus had a close relationship with Mary Magdalene to the best of my understanding, and she was a sex worker, and yet people who are called, like we have, people like Anthony calling in saying that we need purity culture and that people need to, not be having sex at all. And maybe there's things that I'm missing in that argument too, because I'm not super well versed on what that was like, but it's the tolerance.
I would,
the tolerance being preached is confusing.
I would even say, unfortunately, that Anthony is like more benign as far as those perspectives go. Like I've been seeing some groups that on the extreme. So, for those of you who are following me on Twitter, and if you aren't, you shouldn't. You should get off Twitter. You shouldn't be on Twitter. I shouldn't be on Twitter. But I've been getting in fights on Twitter recently, and I'm addicted to duking it out with people on Twitter. And I'd like to think I'm quite good at ratioing people. I've had quite a bit of success with it. But recently, I tweeted something out that was alarming because I talked about how, and Giddy, this might be familiar to you, and Alyssa, I don't know if it's familiar to you or not, but I was covering this or I'm in the process of scripting and then filming a video on this conference that was held at the Ark Encounter called the Fight, Laugh, Feast Conference. And it was put on by Doug Wilson's organization, or at least associated with Doug Wilson's organization. So he's the guy that runs Christ Church out of Moscow, Idaho. And this guy is like absolutely vile. And some of the stuff that he says is like bone chilling to me when I read it. I mean, we're talking about unapologetic, the South wasn't that bad with slavery. We're talking about unapologetic marital rape. Maybe it's a thing, maybe it's not, or at least like that's what his wife has written in her book. A husband can't trespass in his own garden. We're talking harboring very illicit people in the church and not taking it to the police and instead trying to keep it internal. And I'm talking about like child abuse kind of things and of a sexual nature. So we're talking about putting that under the rug. A wife must always submit to her husband. A husband penetrates and conquers, and a wife surrenders and accepts. Like these are quotes that are coming out of this. And so when I posted on Twitter, I was like, this is pretty appalling. And in that sort of thread, I also mentioned that, like, yeah, thankfully, there are wonderful organizations that are helping the people that get out of this church recover. And a lot of them are religious organizations. Like there are Christians out there who absolutely don't condone this and are doing a ton of boots on the ground legwork to help people recover from this kind of thing. And my replies, man, I was seeing some apologia for this guy that I have could never comprehend from people that I've interacted with before on Twitter and was like, I did not think that they would go that far. Right. So it seems like there's this line being drawn in the sand where some people who, when they're being pulled progressive versus archaic, they're going archaic. And that is alarming to me.
Mm-hmm. Giddy, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. What do you think about all that,
yeah,
Giddy?
Just my first thought is, wow, you got lungs. That was impressive.
I talk and talk, and I can't shut up.
No, so what I'm going to do is after this is done, I'm just going to rewatch that and just take notes. So thank you for the homework. I do have, I do have thoughts on that, but they're still gathering. I do have one half question, if I may.
Of course.
Or no? Okay, cool. So this is in relation to the original question, which is, I guess I've heard it said that if you're gay in a church that somewhat that doesn't allow marriage but allows gay membership, like if you're gay, stay, teach us from the inside. My question would be like, is that a good passive change, or is that just a way to I don't know what the word is. Is it greenwash, pride wash, something wash, or to virtue signal of like, we are progressive, we need no more progressiveness? So.
That's interesting. And honestly, Giddy, I think about that a lot because sometimes I have many family members, including my parents, who are religious and are super welcoming and like accepting of all walks of life, including people who are part of the LGBTQ community. And there are so many things that like their ideals are not aligned with really, really extreme conservative Christian ideals. And so that's how they find balance in that. For me, I feel like because the overarching idea can contribute to such vitriol and hate and danger, I don't want to participate in it, even if it's like my local church is saying that they're accepting of all people. I don't feel comfortable participating in it. So, because I just feel like I'm still contributing to that community and that conversation that's happening sort of up here. So I don't know. I think about that a lot too, is basically what I'm saying. And I don't really know the answer. What do you think, Erika?
Gosh, I mean, like, golly, that's a tough one, right? Because I'm not in that situation, and I'm not having to weigh sort of the desire to keep some of this community that maybe I've grown up with or I hold very dear close with an aspect of my identity, right? Like that's not something that I'm being faced with. I understand why people who, are in the LGBTQ community, they're like, okay, my church is okay on these kinds of issues, so I'll put up with the stuff that maybe isn't as progressive in the meantime because they want to hold on to these connections to this community. And like, gosh, I'm not going to sit here and fault them for that. Like that's not my spot. At the same time, like I can't tell you what I would do if I were in that situation because I'm not in it. I hope that those kinds of situations become fewer and fewer, kind of like how you framed it in your question. As for like, should they change things from the inside? Like it reminds me of like the political thing where it's like, oh, like if you're a Democrat, don't leave red states, change them from the inside. Well, to that, I'll say that's easier said than done, right? Like you're not the one who's having to live there, right? And I think that translates to the church situation as well, where it's like, yeah, maybe they do make things more progressive by sticking around, but what do they have to put up with in the meantime? Like, what is that like? And so I guess my answer to the question would be, I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I wish I could offer you a better answer, but unfortunately I'm not in it. So that's the best I got. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Where I'm coming from on
that? Yes, that's. I mean, there's a lot of words to say 3. I don't know, but it makes sense.
Giddy. The first thing that you heard from me was a long diatribe. Surely you were going to get a second one.
I like how he's subtly roasting you the whole.
It's okay. I can put up with it. I'm used to it.
That's so funny.
Okay. Yeah.
Someone in the comments was like, "You should
sorry.
Forced it." True.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Just to be clear, I have the I antagonize to socialize. That's why I don't have any friends. I don't know how to turn it off.
You have friends here. We're laughing with you, buddy.
Yeah, I got thick skin, Giddy. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, that cleared up everything. And I guess if I may clarify one thing, probably looking back at this call, it might seem that I'm actually questioning the question is about myself. Just to clarify, I'm not gay. I'm just really good at it.
Just really good at it. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I know the comments will go, yeah, but just, yeah. Also, thank you for taking my call.
Of course. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you, Giddy. Have a good night. That was funny.
I'm used to that kind of thing. Like, the thing is that people who call in and they don't know what to expect, it's like when I'm on here, you're going to get an earful. That's I got to be me, Alyssa. I can't curb it.
That's the way. And it's weird that you feel like you're saying a lot because I don't feel like you are. And I don't know if that's just because I'm like very engrossed in everything you're saying. But like what you keep saying that like, yeah, sorry, that was really long-winded. And I was like, but was it? And I was like, maybe I'm just like an Erika fangirl and I just don't realize. But I'm very much listening to everything you're saying.
No, you embodied exactly what it feels like when you were like, gosh, so many things are going through my head right now when you were talking with the and I was like, man, that's how I feel every time. Like you get started and they're like, that reminds me of this. And then I also want to say this. And then, I'll bring it together using this. But then it's all happening at the same time. And then you're also like over caffeinated and kind of neurotic. Yeah. So it's like, that's just how it is. It's like,
that's just how it is.
We're doing
exactly.
What do you say
we're doing our best.
Super chat? I've been told by Morgan that we are sitting with a lot of super chats today.
Are we?
A lot. Which is amazing on one hand, but that also means that we need to be like somewhat brief. So, you know what I mean? Okay, $5 from William Matz. Don't worry, Erika, I won't do the thing again. He's doing the thing again. He does this every time. William,
what is the thing?
Thank you for the $5. See, this is the thing. What thing is that, William Matz? Is Erika going to lose the game again? $5. Everyone knows that William Matz knows this. By reading this, you have won the game. $20? Holy mackerel. Okay, finally. I'm sitting pretty. First time for everything. Thank you, William. You're not on my list anymore. You were on it, by the way. $5 from Crystal. You should do Sleepy Hollow Cemetery tour near Halloween. Pitch black graveyard carrying kerosene lanterns. Much fun. That sounds amazing.
I love Sleepy Hollow during Halloween.
I'm down with any kind of autumnal activity. Hay rides, I'm in. Picking pumpkins or gourds, I love it. Decorating pumpkins or gourds or carving them, love it.
Oh.
I love walking around cornfields and just viewing leaves as they change color on the tree. It's all good.
Oh, I want to just be able to wear a scarf. I want to be cozy in public.
Oh my God. And a beanie, and it's brisk, and then when the wind blows, it kind of cools your cheeks. The whole thing is just like, I love it. I'm fantasizing about it already. $5 from Charlotte. Hey girls and slurs, LOL, love you all. Harris Walls 2024, IFG. Yeah, or LFG, let's fucking go. For real, actually. I was so pleasantly surprised. We went balls to the walls, baby. Let's do it.
So exciting.
We got €5 from Ectropo, Carolina Reaper, and a shot of vodka. Oh my God. Mwahaha.
Oh
Are
my
you trying to kill your congregation? Your congregation will be dead.
No,
That
their
is so
congregation,
insane.
respectfully, is going to blow up that bathroom. Everybody in
my
that,
God.
their plumbing system.
Can you imagine? Oh God. Oh, and shots of vodka too. Like, that's just my stomach is just boiling.
My stomach, I read that and my stomach went like this.
I feel like I smelled that super chat. Like, I was like, oh my God.
By the way, just so you know, William Mattis pronouns are they, them.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for letting me know. William, they do that every time. My bad, William. Sorry. $5 from William as my sacrament, A&W root beer, and chocolate cheesecake. See, that's a good sacrament.
That's nice.
That's a sacrament on lock. I'm going to William's church.
Yeah, hell yeah.
We've got that down pat.
That sounds
$10
delicious.
from President Starscream. Sacraments from the cult of Starscream take a hit from a shot collar and this immortal spark of our Lord Starscream, blessed be his fame.
I unlocked like a really suspicious part of our chat with this question.
I feel like you did too. I feel like we're fixing to have to like get some wellness checks on some of these people.
Yeah, right.
Shot collar is your sacrament. $5 from Monkey the Typewriter. I need to know if Anthony is married or a single virgin. If he's anything else, his point is moot. Of course, if he's one of those, still moot. Thank you, Monkey.
Facts. I agree. I would also like to know.
$5 from Charlotte. Moo. It's like a cow's opinion. It doesn't matter. It's moo. Wait, is it?
Moo?
I could have sworn it was the point is moot.
I thought it was moot also.
Referring to Anthony.
Right. Oh, I see. Got it. I think. $5 from Monkey the Typewriter. Anthony is like the Professor X of sinners. It's wild that he knows how we all think, feel, and what motivates us. Anthony, look up humility, brah, and then a little monkey with the hands over the eyes.
Yeah. That's why I was like, why do you care about everybody else's business? Mind your own. People are doing what makes them happy.
Well, I kind of felt like as well that it was like he started with I want people to not sleep around, and then he was like, how can I justify that? Well, I guess they won't spread STDs, and it's like, so it seemed like a weird, maybe I'm off base on that, but that's the vibe that I got, which like, okay, taking a lot of human joy out of getting rid of STDs, but whatever. $10 from Lauren Fishman. When I thought I was just an autistic guy, the idea of holding women responsible for men's thoughts and actions was confusing and stupid. Now that I'm transitioning, it's offensive and scary. Yeah. It's right. Yeah. Again, like going back to this whole like I've been interacting with like a pretty extreme group of religious folks online recently via Twitter. There is a lot of stuff that's like, well, it's very the vibe is very well. What was she wearing? You know what I mean? Which is alarming to say the least. It all tracks along that same purity culture, or you get what you deserve. Which it's like, yikes.
Right. Yeah.
We have a super chat that's going to come in just a moment when Morgan hits it. There it is. $5 from Haley Geringer. My first super chat on Chewed Gum. Love the show and don't often get a chance to listen live. Anthony's a weird dude. Yeah,
true. He is a weird dude. And hashtag Dath. Erika, do you know about Dath? Do you know about Don't Apologize? Okay, so in an earlier episode, there was someone who was arguing about something, and I spoke over him, and I just said, "Oh, sorry," because I spoke over him. And
Yeah.
Eve very quietly just went, "Don't apologize to him." And so now, don't apologize to him. And hashtag Dath has been a part of Chewed Gum now,
Okay.
and I think that's what our merch is going to be, and I'm so excited.
Oh, that's awesome. That is sick.
Yeah.
What a perfect line. And like I think every woman out there has had that experience, right? Like
Yes.
it's in academia too, where like the women in the room are carefully tiptoeing around, and the guys they are unbothered. One of
Yeah.
my colleagues has the sticker that says like have the confidence of like an older white male academic, and I was like, wow. Such if we all had that confidence, the mass of the earth would have to change. Like, holy shit, that would be insane. 5 pounds from Ruby Shine, Sacrament's blue cheese, rarebit on rye toast, sparkling hibiscus with orange juice. Well, yes, I am fancy. Wow, that sounds amazing. That is so nice.
We're coming to your church.
Oh, man. Oh, the rye toast too. That really brings the whole thing full circle.
I'm like salivating a little bit. That sounds so
I
good.
know. That sounds amazing. I'm already kind of hungry too. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. For acts of misogyny above and beyond the call of duty, we award Anthony from VA with the bronze blasted medal. Now a 21 whiny boy salute. Wow.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Above the call of duty.
5 pounds for Ruby Shine. Alyssa and Erika's faces with Anthony proclaiming how women should be. I've had women look at me like that, and I knew I was in trouble. Yeah, he said something at one point. I think it was when he mentioned your attitude, and we were both like,
yeah.
Oh man. I was like, oh, oh my God.
I don't think he meant attitude like attitude. I think he meant it like my tone or I mean, even that sounds, I don't think he meant it as sassy as like it's felt in that moment, but still it made me laugh to be like, my attitude.
Well, it was kind of the way he said it too. He was like, and I think your guys' attitude, especially Alyssa's, and we were both like, oh my God, like, okay. It was kind of funny, but at the same time, it was like, it's fine. It's fine.
But also relax.
Yeah. $5 from Cody. Reagan, is it wrong to look at someone in public you find attractive? Anything that would make a woman uncomfortable? Is there such thing as a harmless look?
That's tough because part of me wants to say that there is such thing as a harmless look, and also like sometimes you just can't help it, but also it's important to recognize that many women feel really unsafe just in day-to-day situations. And so the way that you're looking at a person and how long you look at a person, you could potentially just be making them feel unsafe. And so doing your best to just be like really, really brief and really, really subtle. Like you can't help just like glancing at a person, but like just don't be staring at people.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the situation with that, too, is that people can't read your intent. So, like, it could be, like, a harmless, like, it sounds like from what you're saying here, Cody, like, your looks are quite harmless. Like, you, like, look up and you're like, oh, that person is attractive. Like, everybody has done that. Everybody under the sun has done that. But it's, like, I think that the problem comes when you can't project that intent. So I think what Alyssa is saying, where it's like, if you want to be on the safe side, be quick and be appropriate and, don't linger. If you notice that you're making them uncomfortable, maybe like, I don't know, like smile in a friendly way and back off, or I don't know. I mean, like I'm like oblivious to this kind of thing. So like, I never notice anything anywhere ever. I'm not a perceptive person, but I'm trying to imagine if I was in a situation where it's like, I found somebody and they were like looking at me and like how I would feel. And I think it's better safe than sorry.
Yeah, agreed. Unless you're like, ultimately, if you're going to talk to the person, then you can find an appropriate way to start conversation. But if you're just looking for the sake of looking, like I would just err on the side of being really careful and brief.
Yeah. $20 from Cedar and Sound Studios. The purity culture I support is the pure winning of women in the Olympics. Someone's drinking their respect women juice, and I think it's Cedar and Sound Studios. I love to see it. Certainly the purity of those medals is something we can all get behind. Also, yes, it was a run with the no homo policy, CP like others thought. Yeah. I think I'm like 99% sure I was also corrected on that last time, but no one confirmed that because that will be devastating.
Because that would be devastating.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know that I'm making the same mistake a million times. $5 from ENW68. I don't watch live, so just here to drop my first super. Wonderful, thank you. I was wondering if Erika, if either / both of you could speak to the fluidity of female sexual arousal. And then the second one, I believe this is part 2, $5 from ENW68. I've read that women tend to be aroused by viewing a variety of activity. As a het female, I feel like this rings true and would appreciate thoughts. Yeah, I mean, so, with that kind of thing, it's tough to speak outside of like anecdotal or like, friends and family experiences, like talking to other women in my life. But it's like, I think it's almost a frame of mind with women more than it is with men. That's a huge generalization. That's not always going to hold. But in my experience, it's like for women, it's not so much that we're not visual, right? Like that tends to be thrown around with, oh, women aren't as visual as men. I don't know that it's that as so much as it's like, it's a mindset, right? Like when you're in that, like what Alyssa was talking earlier about, like the squishy pink brain, when you are in that state. It's like, I think that's kind of when you got those goggles on, right? Then things kind of hit different, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And there's also, there are different types of desire. Like there's a theory of 2 different types of desire that we experience. And one of them is spontaneous and one of them is responsive. So people who are, and this can change based on like your energy level that day or your attitude that day. It can vary. But most people stick to one type of desire type. So a spontaneous desire type means that you are pretty much ready to go whenever. It takes very little sexual stimulus for you to want to be aroused and to be aroused. Like you can get into the mind frame or mindset of having sex or engaging in a sexually intimate activity very quickly, very easily. Somebody who is more on the responsive desire side needs a little more stimulus, needs a little bit more foreplay, needs more of the context to sort of like get them in the mood. And it's been suggested that women are more on the responsive side typically. But I don't know that there's actually any research to support that. Partially because I think that we also are too affected by the way that upbringing is around sexuality. And so we are not as uninhibited in our sexual expression. So like more women might fall into that spontaneous category more if they felt more connected to their sexuality and felt more safe in their sexuality. But many women don't, because we have these like very unsafe situations. We could talk about man versus bear all day. So there are different arousal types and different desire types that people experience, but it's going to vary. Like there are plenty of women who are actually like part of that spontaneous group where they don't need a lot of stimulus. They don't need a lot of context to get them into that arousal state. So it really depends. Everybody's very different.
Human variation is a wonderful thing.
Indeed.
Okay, $10 from Mahalia Yaga. So much of the pushback feels like men upset that they need to actually try and not be gross. What? Women don't want to be kept in the cupboard and used as men want. Outrageous. Yeah, and like there seems to be this vibe amongst a lot of these guys too, where they have to frame it because just saying that is vile and no woman is going to be on board with that. They have to frame it in a way that it's like, well, that's what's best for women. That's actually what women want. That's what keeps them safe. And it's like, well, okay, safe from who? You guys?
Safe from who?
Like, come on, like, yeah.
It's also kind of always. I can't think of a time where we had a woman call in and tell us what they think will keep a woman safe, and that's what the answer was. It's only men who call in and think that the answer to keeping women safe is purity culture. And I would like them to reflect on that. Because we've never had a woman call in and say that.
It's alarming too, because like it reminds me of those old things that like a dad, like, well, I've seen this in like movies and stuff like that, where like a dad will be like, oh yeah, or like maybe it was church videos or something. I can't quite remember, but it's like the dad character is like, yeah, the reason why having a daughter like really makes you protective over the women in your life is because you know what the boys that are going to be looking at her are thinking. And it's like, bro, what?
Ew.
Don't
like
tell
literally
yourself
ew.
like that. That's disgusting. Like
Exactly.
you're just saying that's scary. And again, you know,
Yes.
you referenced it, so like I'll say like that's where the bear comes from. That's where the bear comes in. You know, just be normal. That's I'm begging people to be normal. Just be normal.
Please be normal.
Please be normal. $5 from the Raven 200. Just typing in to remind you to consensually spank that like button's jiggly booty. Jimmy, go take an eradicator by the new women's champ, Nia Jax.
Love it.
$4.99 from Coffee Mom. I prefer when my partner does not see me as sexually pure. It's actually the worst possible POV he could have. Love means different things to different people. Yeah, like that was like seemingly a very difficult concept for like when you were chatting with Anthony in particular, where it's like, okay, like, you know, if that works for you, wonderful. Like, go do that. Do your thing. You know, find a consenting partner and do your deal. But like, you can't expect everybody to fall into that same little cookie cutter because that is not how humans work, and it's not how we've ever worked. We're weird critters.
I also think it would just be really weird to be a 30-year-old woman and have my partner view me as sexually pure. That makes me feel like a little infantilized and a little, it's giving Lolita in a way that I don't like.
Well, it's condescending, isn't it? Right? Like, it's like, well,
extremely.
You need to be kept sexually pure. Him too, but to a lesser extent, and mostly him to keep men from ruining the purity of women, I guess, in a sort of heteronormative kind of way. But like, don't love it.
Exhausting.
$5 from William Matt. I can dom, but because my kink involves pain, I don't like to. I don't like hurting people.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Then you can do something else. Then you can do what you like. And that's the best part.
That is the best part. $5 from William Matz. For all its be pure crap, Christianity is Duncan kinky, corporal punishment, washing feet, degradation, worship, etc.
You said it, not me, William. You said it, not me. Okay?
$10 from Charlotte. Erika, thank you so much for your poignant thoughts. I found myself nodding my head so much during your answers. Really good to have you here along with Alyssa. I'm glad to be here. Happy to offer my my monkey thoughts wherever and whenever I can force them into the conversation.
Love it.
I'm glad someone does. I fortunately, you know, we were talking about compatibility. This is why it's so important to be sure that the person you settle down with is the person you want to settle down with. Because my husband listens to me talk about monkeys all day long, and he asks questions about them.
Soulmate.
Soulmate, exactly. $5 from Alishana Silverbow. Sorry. A police officer came to my door the other day, and he said he was looking for a man with one eye. I said it would probably go faster if you used both. I see what this is becoming. Is it a
That's funny.
$10 from Rogue Show, $2.96. I gotta get it off my chest. Anthony's hypothetical where everyone is pure does not work because segs abst leads to SA, which leads to STDs. Also, Correct. He sounds like Dash when he uses degen. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely dog whistle terms there. And then like I probably wasn't clear enough, and Alyssa, you were probably getting at this too, but like that's part of the problem because when you do repress people like that, they tend to quote unquote act out in ways that are, you know, benign but deemed act out by a society, and in ways that are actually like not acting out, they're criminal. Right. Like ethnic. So
correct.
I would like to not see that. I would prefer to not see that. Thank you. $5 from Sapphic Bibliophile. My insanely girly sacrament, pink champagne and a proper croissant.
I love it.
I feel like those asterisks hold a lot of weight. I feel like I don't know what real croissants are now.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm like, what is a proper croissant? I love croissants. And now I'm like, have I even had a proper one?
That's kind of what I'm thinking too. Like from a good bakery, and the bakery is probably in like Sicily or something, you know?
Well, croissants are French, so I would hope that the bakery would be in France.
That's a good point. $5 from William Matz. If you lose the game, mwahaha, chaos. They roll in here, they give it, and then they take it away. So thank you very much, William. I don't
That's
look
really
forward to
funny.
seeing you next time.
That is so funny. I love that ongoing game that you have.
They do it. I don't think I'm the only one they're doing it to. I think they're doing it to several people. I think, but I get mad about it, and in a jovial kind of way. But still,
Yeah.
don't show your face around here, William. $5 for Monkey to Typewriter. Not to bring back man versus man or bear, but since we have Erika here, what ancient hominid would you most want to meet in the forest? Homo floresiensis. The one that I would most want to meet is probably going to be the one that is like least close to human, or the one that I think I could definitely take, or the one that I would want to like just engage with the most. And so I'm thinking Ardipithecus ramidus. I want to meet Ardipithecus ramidus. I want to see its weird feet. I know it would be an absolute sweetheart, so I have no fears from Ardi. It would almost definitely not rip me into a million pieces, or like put me in a basement and torture me like some unnamed later hominins, cough cough Homo sapiens would do.
Love it.
$5 from Mahalia Yaga. I forgot my sacrament. Dark and stormy with charcuterie.
Ooh, that's a combo.
So I'm wondering if the situation is like the charcuterie is like it's up there and like you get to take a couple of pieces, or like you get a mini charcuterie to like take with you. You know what I mean? Like, have you seen those like charcuterie cups where it's like, like my cousin was at a wedding where it's like you get to take one with you. So I'm wondering which that's going to be, but I like to imagine that we get our own.
I love that. Morgan's drinking a Dark and Stormy right now, so he's halfway there.
He's halfway there. $5 from Bike and Nurse Ratchet. So tired of hearing misogynistic jokes. What do you guys do when men around you make disparaging comments / jokes about women? I have a surefire way to respond to this every time, and I give a little chuckle, and then I go, women be shopping. You just kind of like you lean into it, and then they kind of feel like an ass because they're like, oh yeah, what I said is kind of stupid and also not very funny. Like I remember being a teen when like the make me a sandwich or like get back into the kitchen jokes were big, and like they weren't ever very funny even when they were first on the scene. Like that, haha, I get it. Women should be in domestic roles. Like, all right, what else do you have? Like, there's so many jokes that you can make about women that are funny. Like we're these odd little gremlins that do silly stuff. I mean, you could do so many funny jokes about women. Just be funny about them. And most of them, as you pointed out here, are not funny. They're just misogynistic. So it's like, yeah, women be shopping. True. You got our number.
True. I also will just ask, I'll just say that I don't get it. So if they make a joke about how like women are always shopping or something, I'll just be like, wait, I don't understand. Can you explain it? Because nothing is more humbling to a man for him to then be like, well, it's because, women, they shop a lot. And I don't think that, but other people think that. And so to watch them absolutely like crumble under having to verbalize what stupid misogynistic joke they were trying to tell, and then also backpedal and say that that's not something that they think is funny. Other people say it's funny.
Because inevitably, after the joke doesn't land, they have to be like, okay, like here's what the joke was supposed to be, but I don't even think it's funny, and like I don't even believe that. So, wow,
exactly.
I love it. That's actually a great response. $5 from Rogue Show 296. Cool question for Erika: is purity culture exclusive to hominids or to humans? Excuse me. I don't think we know. I mean, so what we can actually compare when we look through other hominins, we can look at Neanderthals, and my understanding of Neanderthals is they were probably pretty egalitarian, much like early human hunter-gatherer societies. And the reason that that's proposed is because they don't appear to have a distinct difference in the breakage patterns between males and females, which suggests that they were doing similar stuff. And what's cool, and I say this every time because it's a neat little factoid, those pathologies, the closest modern analog is rodeo riders. So I don't know like what they were getting up to, but they were getting seriously injured in a way that was like riding a bucking bronco. So I don't know what they were quite up to. And outside of that, it's like Denisovans, we're not really sure. We don't have enough of them. Homo erectus, they're not super sexually dimorphic, and we don't see a ton of difference between the males and the females. So I mean, I would say yeah. Like tentatively, I would say yeah. We don't have any support for purity culture and anything else. So maybe that's what separates us. $5 from Sheridan Bernasconi. There's no effing God, Anthony.
Right to the point.
Right to the point. $9.99 from Jason. My favorite Tuesday night jam. Welcome back, Alyssa. Huge Gutsikiban fanboy here. Team Dath. Thank you, Jason, for your kind words.
You.
And obviously, we'll be getting the cool merch when it comes out with a hashtag like that. So,
hell yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you.
$5 from Jamnick06. Jamnick's Sacrament. Almond milk and Oreo cookies. Wonderful show. If that almond milk is cold, I'm on board with that. I can't do like it, but it's got to be cold, like some cold almond milk with an Oreo cookie. But I'm on board.
That's good. That's good. I love it. I love the sacraments. Do we have any more?
We do. So, $5 Australian from Raven Lunatic. Raven Sacrament, a bite of lemon and a shot of tequila. Salt is dude, that's like, again, I smell this. I read that and my nostrils were like, oh my gosh, like it just hurts my stomach. We've all had the bad night with a liquor, and college was not kind to me in that I had bad nights with most types of liquor.
With all of them.
I see the word tequila, I'm like, oh god, that reminds me of that one night. And then it's like we talking about vodka, that reminds me of that one night. Like they all hurt.
They all hurt.
$5 from Monkey to Typewriter. Sacrament. Temple of the Typewriter. A token of blunt. Use my breath. Put this tab on your tongue. Don't worry what one is. See you in 8 hours. Dude, you guys are like, we're reliving like 18 to 22 here.
Yeah, really. Oh my god.
So you're having like a full revelation.
Yeah.
The typewriter temple is just like you're actually going to meet God. Like you're just gonna
you're gonna meet first one.
Yeah, or you're gonna meet her, maybe. I like that better. $5 from Bike R Nurse Ratchet. My parents used to tell us act like a lady, never told boys to act like a gentleman. Boys were told to man up. Did they know they were shaming us or just like pigeonholing you guys? Like And the worst part is, and I say this every time because I wear my feminism badge proudly, despite the fact that Gamergate made it cringe for like 6 years. Feminism is good for everybody, right? It's an egalitarian philosophy that benefits men and women and everybody in between. Because the point of it is that everybody can choose what it is that they want. Men aren't forced to be this one archetype of what a man is and not be allowed to show emotion. Women are allowed to have jobs or be a mom or do both, and everybody in between is allowed to do whatever they want. Like that's what it's about, and I will never forgive Gamergate for taking that word and making it something that you feel like you, for so long, at least I did online, I felt like I had to justify it. Like, I'm a feminist, and here's what that means. It's like, golly.
Yeah.
$5 from Larry Fishman. My sacrament. Green, how do you say that? Chartreuse?
Chartreuse, yeah.
Chartreuse. And a thick slice of red Leicester cheese.
Green chartreuse I just had for the first time in a cocktail this weekend, and it's kind of licoricey.
I've never had chartreuse.
I've never had it on its own. I've had it in a cocktail. I'd be interested. I wonder if you just like sip it. Like if you're just having green chartreuse, if you just sip it in like sort of like the way you do port wine or something. I don't know, but I like cheese.
I love cheese. My thing is, I don't like licorice. So if it's licoricey, then I'm going to be like, I'm not going to be interested.
Yep. Understood.
$5 from William Matt. If your brother can stand after Smegs, you didn't earn your sandwich. William,
shit.
You lead such a fascinating life. I have so many questions. I really did. $5 from Alishana Silverbow, another $5 for Alyssa's response to misogynistic jokes. Truly, I love it. I also love that.
I love it. I think it's good. It's very humbling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Down to earth. $5 from Secular Felinist, a Bad Diet Gamer Sacrament, Mountain Dew, and a pepperoni Hot Pocket. We're now back in ice. We're just going all the way down. Next is going to be like a sippy cup of milk and or like a Danimals and
hell yeah.
what would be like a Dunkaroo maybe, or like Teddy Grahams, something like that.
Oh, Teddy Grahams.
Yeah, like the cinnamon ones. Those ones are so good. $5 from Chad Stewart. Second, chocolate mousse cake and a chocolate martini. Oh God, that's gonna be so rich.
That sounds so good. That might be another one though. The church bathroom is going to be a rough place, I think, after that. Yeah. But I love where your mind's at.
You're gonna want to hustle home. Cool. That's it. Okay, let me hit our schedule here. And I want to give a hearty thank you to all of those who super chatted, all of those who called in. I know we normally get through all of the calls, but I think that we had some good conversations that were worth it despite our cap here. So I hope everybody was satisfied with it. I had a ball. Let me go through this little schedule real quick and let you guys know what is coming up, what's on the old agenda here. So what is today? Today is the 6th, and there is you and me right there. Okay, I see it. Okay, tomorrow, which is Wednesday, we have the Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty, Jim Barrows, and Morgan producing. The following day, we have the Translated Colin show with Josie and Luxander. Morgan's producing again. And then this Sunday, we have the Sunday show with Jimmy and Aaron Adair, followed by the Sunday show After Dark with Paula Gia and Eric SS. So we've got a wonderful set of shows that are coming up. If you guys like this kind of thing, and I say this on my channel, right, and you're like, I love the line, but I don't really want to super chat, I don't have any questions, I don't feel like calling in, I'm not on the Patreon or whatever, you can support this show for free by liking it, leaving a comment, and for your comment this time, leave your sacrament, right? That's a perfect opportunity to go say, I didn't get to super chat my sacrament. Put it down below, and subscribe to the line if you're not subscribed already, because all of that stuff helps the algorithm suggest this kind of content, and it helps us keep the lights on here. So if you like this kind of thing, you can support it for free. And, you're going to see our faces, our ugly mugs all over your recommendeds, but that's the only price you'll pay. So do it. And gosh and golly, I don't think I have anything else. Alyssa, do you have anything you want to say before we sign out of here?
I don't think so. This has been great. I'm so happy that you were on this week.
Yeah, I'm glad we've crossed paths, but so rarely. It's nice to get a more consistent hangout.
I agree, and I love all your monkey facts. I don't care what anyone says.
Good, because they're coming and they aren't going to stop, which seems to be in line with our theme of today, keeping things sexy. So, guys, thank you so much for being here, and we can't wait to see you next time. In the meantime, take care of yourselves.
Thank
my goodness. They're over there. Over there.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Erika.